Is Kenya basically trying to wholeheartedly turn to the East, or they're now going to become the snitch if any case they're allowed into the bloc? Because that can happen. You are welcome to Africa Uncovered YouTube channel. My name is DJ as usual, and today we are back again to discuss something to do with Kenya. We are discussing, or rather we have a working title, Kenya to become a full Brics member before Uganda. Yes, Kenya to become a full Brics member before Uganda. Welcome to Africa Uncovered. Not long ago, Brics concluded its 16th summit that was held in Russia in an area called Kazan. Now, so many countries were invited to attend, and we saw so many things transpiring during this summit. And one of the most notable things that were being discussed was to find ways, or pushing for ways, on how the bloc can have its own payment system. And there were steps forward discussed during this summit. Now, another notable thing that was concluded in this summit is that more countries were added onto the bloc. More countries were added onto the bloc, and some of them as full members, while others were added on as partner states. And among the full members were Ethiopia, Iran, and Egypt, among others. And then other 13 countries were added onto the bloc as partner states, and among them are East African countries in general, but most notably one of the East African countries. Now, those countries in Africa that were added onto the bloc as partner states include Nigeria, Algeria, and Uganda. Now, the main statement in there is the addition of Uganda on the Brics bloc. Now, first and foremost, Uganda was not in attendance at the Brics, but from the look of things, according to the discussions according to the frequent visits that we've seen in the recent past of especially the Russian officials in Uganda, suggested that there could have been a pre-discussion towards Uganda's involvement or Uganda's acceptance into the alliance or the bloc. Now, why are we driving this? That Uganda seemed to be the first East African community country to become aligned to the bloc. Much as they are not fully members yet, but at least they were the first partner states in East African community to be part of the Brics. And this did not leave the Kenyan populace alone. It did not go down well with them. They have been asking themselves, why would Uganda, join the bloc first before us? And some of them had answers to that, saying that Uganda aligns in values with the Far East, that is Russia, China, and other countries, unlike Kenya, which is predominantly in alliance with the West. Now, what does this mean? We remember that at the point when Ruto had just taken office, one of the things that he was very vocal about was that at one point, everyone who was still holding a dollar as a currency was likely to plunge into, issues, into problems, because a dollar was going to lose its value. So he became so vocal to an extent that at one point we started seeing him taking visits to the US. And the tones at the point of return turned. I mean, someone who was so vocal before the visits, but after the visits, he was entirely different. He started talking really, really ill against what Russia was doing in Ukraine. He started, advocating. No, he started really talking bad about it, saying that what Russia was doing in Ukraine was bad, not seeing it as a means of defending themselves as a sovereign country from the dominance of the West. So basically, the tone that he had when he had just come in office started swinging towards the West. And we already knew that Kenya was one of those countries that really allied with the West in most of the things that they were doing. That's why they have so many international organizations with headquarters in Kenya, even including most prominent media houses, rather than other being spread across other East African countries. So we already knew that they allied so much with the West. Now, the issue of Uganda becoming, being the first East African community country to join the Brics, much as a partner state, was inevitable because at least the president of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has been so supportive and so in alliance with the East, and has been called so many sorts of names, and has had problems with the West, including cutting of aid and so many things. So it was inevitable. However, a few days ago, when a Chinese top official had paid a courtesy visit to Dr. William Ruto in Kenya, he used this opportunity, or William Ruto used this opportunity to request the president of China to help them to convince Russia so that Kenya could become a member of the Brics. Okay, we're going to look at an article that was, captured in one of the Kenyan papers called the Kenyan Foreign Policy, but also another article in the RT, a publication in Russia. So they used this opportunity to request China to help them convince Russia so that they could become member of the bloc. But we already know that Russia is not at good terms with Kenya for having been so supportive of the Western policies that are seemingly putting Russia on the wall, including sanctions. Because if you support the West, it means that you're supporting the sanctions that have been put on Russia. So there is no reason why, again, you should come out, requesting to be part of the bloc that they are seemingly leading. So through an official from the Russian government called Li Zi, a member of the APC Central Committee Political Bureau in China, the Kenyan president requested that they are assisted in convincing Russia so that they could become member of the bloc. We're reading from the KP, or Kenyan Foreign Policy, one of the publications in Kenya. President William Ruto is making bold moves to position Kenya as a member of the Brics, seeking Chinese backing to join the influential bloc of emerging economies. In a meeting in Nairobi recently, Ruto directly requested support from Xi, a high-ranking official in China's Communist Party. The push for Brics membership marks Kenya's attempt to align with the countries challenging the dominance of the West political and economic influence, according to now a deleted statement from the Ruto's office. So basically, Ruto's office at one point had put a statement on one of the socials, seemingly saying that the reason why they are pushing for the membership is to attempt to align themselves with countries that are fighting or challenging the dominance of the West political and economic influence. So they're seemingly swinging this time around. But you see, had he gone at the pace he had come, here the entire country, I want to believe, that population itself would have supported him to really, really align with the East. But things turned at one point when we saw him in the White House, basically sitting in the chair of the president, when the whole tone started changing. So this bid comes at a time when Brics is expanding its membership and strategic clout. Just weeks ago, Russia hosted a high-profile Brics summit in Kazan, like we had discussed, drawing significant global audience and highlighting Russia's engagement with emerging economies despite the Western sanctions over Ukraine conflict. The bloc recently welcomed Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, UAE into its fold, joining the established members Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So, like we said, there were countries that during the recently concluded summit were made full members, and these include Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, and the UAE. And then the other 13 countries were made partner states. So despite the long-standing alliance with the US, Kenya has shown growing interest in building closer ties with both China and Russia. Yes, because they're trying to do so because they see where the powers are shifting to, the New World Order shifting to the east. So basically, there's nothing Kenya could do rather than, trying to align themselves with the seemingly isolated countries in the essence, but when they're actually, strong and standing countries. In fact, Kenya has been vocally critical of Russia over its sanctions in Ukraine, like we had discussed. Ruto has yet not shied away from nurturing trade and diplomatic ties with Moscow. So much as there's been that tension, he's been trying to, bridge the gap so that, the diplomatic channels and trade could continue with Moscow, and that is Russia. So basically, if all this goes through, like how he's trying to get close to China and trying to, have the president convince Russia so that they could become members of the Brics, then we could see possibly Kenya, jumping the queue ahead of Uganda to become a full member of the Brics even before Uganda does. Who knows? Last year, during the visit by the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Ruto pledged to boost Kenya-Russia trade relations, a stance highlighted when the new ambassador to Russia, Peter Muthuki, presented his credentials to President Vladimir Putin. So regardless of the standoff and, vocally criticizing Russia, Kenya has continued to have its representation in Russia through their, ambassadors, and they have been advocating for, a close relationship. So the tone and everything seems now to want to shift to the east rather than what we had always seen before. So is Kenya basically trying to wholeheartedly turn to the east, or they're now going to become the snitch if any case they're allowed into the bloc? Because that can happen. One party can use you in someone's camp to, always sneak out information, very important documents and all that. So we don't know if Kenya is the one that is going to play the snitch role in all this. In any case, they are allowed in the bloc. Whether it is going to happen or not, we're waiting to see, because even the person that was speaking to, as though William Ruto cannot have a phone call conversation with Vladimir Putin and say, look here, we wish to amend, the broken fences that have been there and tried to work together. Can we do that? So that, Vladimir Putin can put the terms and conditions for fulfillment by Kenya for him to become the member, rather than going through not even the president of China, but one of the people close to the government to speak to Xi Jinping, the president of China, who in turn convinces Russia. It is simple. If you feel like you want to become member of the Brics, get a phone call, speak to Vladimir Putin, speak to the president of China, and, convince them. Speak to them and say, look, I am here. I want to become a member. I have been wronged before. I've been, in bed with wrong people. can I join? And then from there, they can discuss internally and see if you're worthy or not. Otherwise, Uganda, as it stands, is ahead of Kenya in the queue of becoming a full member. But unless there's a paradigm change that makes Kenya leapfrog Uganda to become a full member. So basically, that's what I thought we would discuss, that Kenya could potentially become a full member of the Brics before Uganda, but that is in quotes because there is even no direct conversation. Or nevertheless, I don't even know if they have ever applied. Otherwise, from me to you, I am TJ and I say adios.